happy belated St. Patrick's Day. It's really late. And I was talking to another person on YouTube and said that one of the real conversations that we need to have has to do with the issue not just of meat and veganism, but all the other products that we get from livestock, most especially medications. There are hundreds of medications, antivenoms, vaccines, cardiac medications. Most important of all, really and honestly, with today's culture is the issue of insulin. The average diabetic blows through 26 cattle pancreases every year. And that's because that's how insulin is made, is from the fresh glands of cattle, sheep, pigs, and rabbits. That's where we get insulin from. And for the record, all of these pharmaceutical companies that sell insulin for a high price, the way that they get away with that is that they keep tweaking their formulas. These insulins are all derived from animal glands. And these glands are actually harvested at the time of slaughter so that they're fresh, they're flash frozen, and those pancreases are converted for their insulin. And the pharmaceutical companies have managed for a century now to maintain their patents, which is why insulin is so expensive. There's no such thing as a generic insulin product because these companies know, because of our plant-based diet, how absolutely profitable insulin can be. And so what they've been doing is they have been tweaking their formulas every few years so that they can apply for a new patent so that they can make more money. And now that we're on a plant-based diet, and the American Diabetic Association has for the last 50 years been recommending that diabetics have at least 46% of all their caloric intake coming from carbohydrates, well, guess what? You exacerbate diabetes. So we've got a large number of people who are all insulin-dependent diabetics, and the problem isn't getting any better because why? Because we have all of these corporations that are trying to push even more carbohydrates on the populace. Why? Because it makes us fat, it makes us weak, it makes us compliant, and it's a fucking drug. And so then they get all these people on insulin and other medications for comorbidities, and you have these people who are basically cash cows until the day they die. But these products, these medications, they come from livestock. So when vegans are talking about animals dying and cruelty to animals, well, there's also this cruelty factor to the human population because we get almost all of our antivenoms from horses. We get the vast majority of all of our medications for cardiac patients from cattle and pigs. In fact, in pigs, we also get a lot of our anticoagulants, like heparin sodium. So if you're having a heart attack and you go to the emergency room, and let's just be clear, the vast majority of people who have heart attacks and strokes actually have normal cholesterol levels. So the accusation that eating meat makes you have heart attacks, no, it's inflammation that makes you have a heart attack. But the fact of the matter is that when you need to get rid of a clot, you're either using TPA or you're using heparin, possibly warfarin. Warfarin is generally more of something that we use therapeutically over time. But those anticoagulants come from pigs. We have, let me think. So I just sold a bunch of pelts from last year's sheep. And wouldn't you know it, medical sutures, medical gauze, packing wool for surgeries, that all comes from sheep's wool. We use sheepskin in medicine so that we can pack pressure sores. And pressure sores happen in everybody. They happen in surgical patients. They happen in athletes. They happen in paraplegics and quadriplegics. They happen in the elderly. And we need those supplies. And the reason that we use them is because they don't have the kind of allergic potential that synthetic plastic products do. So we get most of our vaccines from horses, from pigs, from chickens. We even get glandular medications from little baby hamsters. We get vaccines from mice. And so this idea that veganism is just about cutting meat out of the food supply is a lie. I worked in medicine for 15 years. And when I went back to farming, it was because I wanted to save my life. Because I spent nearly 20 years of my life taking daily doses of epinephrine, which also come from cattle, by the way. So, the adrenal glands of cattle are harvested and used by the meat packers and industrial medical tech to create epinephrine. I can get a 90 ml crash cart vial of epi for $13. And a half a mg of that is enough to actually not stop, but suppress a histamine reaction that could kill me. But the fact of the matter is that that epinephrine costs $13 for a crash cart vial, and yet the pharmaceutical industry knows that people are having more and more issues with pseudoanaphylaxis and anaphylaxis, chronic angioedema, chronic urticaria, and all of those medications outside emergency hospital visits are actually they're required for mast cell disorders. And why do we have so many mast cell disorders? Because we're all having food allergies. Why are we having food allergies? Because we're all eating plants. We're all eating grains. And what that does to your body is it creates inflammation. It creates pockets of allergic reactions in your body where your body starts attacking itself. This is why we have seen such a rise in autoimmune illnesses, is because our diet is filled with plants. And it was never like this in the past. Historically, we didn't eat this way. So now we're dependent on antihistamines, which are created from animals. Now we're dependent on things like thyroxine for for thyroid function that has gone awry. Thyroxine, by the way, is produced from pigs and from cattle. The epinephrine that I'm talking about is produced from cattle. We have all of these medical supplies, hundreds of medications, more than 40 that are produced just from cattle. And yet the vegans want you to believe that we can just eradicate animal agriculture and the world will be peaceful and fine. What they're not telling you is that your medical system is actually run on cattle. What they're not telling you is that cattle actually run the world. as do porcine, as do equine, as do poultry medicine. And it is medicine. Not only that, but if you want to look at anything else, talk to a vegan about where their paint comes from, where their glues come from. Ask them about floor wax, because that comes from animals too. It's just unbelievable to me that we've gotten to this point where we have an entire segment of society that is buying into this idea that we can do without livestock in the world, that we need to cut back on our meat consumption. And here's the deal. If we cut back any more on our meat consumption, any more than we already have, these medications are going to become more expensive. They're going to become more rarely available to the poor, especially. And we're going to be told that we don't have the availability of these medications. Why? Well, that's just for the simple fact that we don't have the animals to make those medications. Next time a vegan comes to you and asks you if you'd like to stop eating meat, ask them when was the last time that they went to the emergency room for any kind of accident. Ask them when the last time they required any kind of emergency intervention for an accident or an illness. Ask them the last time they had a baby and what medications they used when they were in the hospital. Because I guarantee you, those vegans have actually been treated with medications that are derived from animal byproducts, and they're just not telling you. Either that, or they're completely ignorant about where these medications come from, where the medical tech comes from. Yeah. Veganism is stupid. And the best thing about going back to farming was the fact that I got away from all processed foods. I got away from having to eat salads on a daily basis. I went back to eating beautiful meats and poultry. Yesterday, I took a 38-pound brisket, folded it over, put it in the largest Dutch oven I had, put in, just like my grandmother used to, a handful of mulling spices, a handful of pickling spices, enough salt to make the water taste like the sea, covered it with water, put a lid on it, stuck it in the oven at 260 for 12 hours. God, I love having cattle. I really do. One of the best meals I've had this winter. And it came from my own cattle. And because of those cattle, I don't have to take epinephrine anymore. But you know what? There's a lot of people out there who do. And it's not fair to try and put the morality of eating cattle on them, because the fact is that their lives are dependent on you eating meat and you actually being a consumer. So when they tell you that it's just about food, it's a lie.